Yeah, so today we're gonna talk about using native sensors here in ProtoPie. And just before we begin, I think for this exercise, we might want to connect to a real smartphone device for our previews because we're using native sensors. So if you don't have the ProtoPie app ready or download it on your phone, I think now is a good time. So if you go on your App Store or Google Play Store, you can type ProtoPie, and find the preview player app that we provide, which allows you to preview prototypes right on the phone. So uh, we're gonna talk about native sensors. So I think one of the cool things about ProtoPie is you can use real sensors on your phone to do various prototyping on your phone and without too much code. So I think that's one of the strong suits of ProtoPie and something that you should definitely take advantage of. So I think last time in the first session, you talked about manipulating images, media, etc. In your prototypes. And today we're gonna go further and talk about using sensors, various different sensors in ProtoPie, and things like sound, speech recognition, the camera, things like this we'll be exploring today, and hope you enjoy learning more about these features. So we're gonna do 3 demos today. So the first is a camera demo, which will be using the camera sensor on your phone. So to show a demo, take a picture. So you can do various things using your phone's camera in ProtoPie. And then we're gonna also explore typing. So using your real keyboard to do inputs and user forms and things like that in ProtoPie, which is pretty cool, pretty nifty feature. Saves you a lot of time for user testings and things like that. And last but not least, we're gonna explore voice interactions.
Turn off the kitchen light.
Sure, the kitchen light has been turned off.
Yep. So these are the 3 demos that we're gonna make today. So let's begin. So we'll be providing the source file to download. Let's get that set up and ready. And if there's any questions along the way, just feel free to leave in the chat or just ask. So Leah just sent the link on the chat. So please go to that link and download the file. Okay, so we're gonna get set up. How's everyone doing with the downloading and opening ProtoPie Studio? Everything good? So just to briefly go over, so I think you're already familiar with this prototype. So we're just gonna continue from last session and work with the 3 demos on the same file. So let's go to IoT Home. So what we're gonna do basically is we're gonna go from IoT Home and work on the camera app in the camera scene, the text input in the settings scene, and the voice interaction in the voice scene. So just to briefly recap, I think you learned about jump triggers in the previous jump responses in the previous session. So let's just connect the different scenes that we have. So here, I think last time you made something like this interaction where you pull from the side and you are swiping. So I think what we want to do is we want to go from the settings here to the settings page. So let's just make the connection as a recap. So I'm going to be pressing on the settings button and I want to jump to a different scene. So once a user taps on it, we'll choose the tap trigger and we'll have a jump response where the user will go to the settings screen. So let's try that. Preview settings. Okay, so we're here. Okay, so let's go to the settings scene and do the same thing where the user taps on this camera icon here and we'll be taken to the camera interaction, camera demo. So let's make that connection as well. So I'm going to select the camera icon and add a trigger of tap. So when the user taps on this, we want them to jump to a different scene, which is in this case, camera. So just make sure, let's try that. Okay, we're good. And last but not least, let's go to the camera scene where we will actually begin our first real demo here. And if there's anything you have questions about the camera demo, just feel free to ask in the chat. So what we want to do is, so I think we want to do a couple of things. So we want to learn how to actually use the camera sensor in the prototype and a couple of things. So first, we want to actually launch a camera. So that's number one. Number two is we want to, when the user taps on this flip icon, we want them to flip the front and rear camera back and forth. And last but not least, when they press the shutter button, we want to take a picture. So we'll be trying this interaction in ProtoPie. So first, I'm going to, at this point, show the ProtoPie player. What I have here is, I have the my phone ProtoPie player mirrored here. So we're gonna see how the actual phone shows on the screen on the left. So to do anything with the camera, in ProtoPie, you need a camera layer. So we have this camera layer feature in media. So if you go to media on the top left, you can press camera and we can insert a camera layer. So the camera layer basically will show a camera. So here, oh yeah, we haven't started. So we use the camera layer to actually show the what the camera sensor sees. So in this case, in this example, let's move the camera layer all the way back because we want the buttons like X, the shutter and things like that to be on top of the whole thing. So I'm gonna stretch it all the way and move it all the way down in the order. Yep. And we don't need this, so let's just remove that. So we have our camera layer in place. And in ProtoPie, to actually have the camera layer show something, we have to have it start. So there are two ways of doing this. So I'll show you the one way, which is if you click on the camera layer, on the right, you'll see on the right, you'll see an auto start check mark. So if you press on this, we'll see that ProtoPie player will be showing the real camera. So let's just see that in our camera app. You see here, this is my room, and yeah, you see on the left, I am actually using the camera layer to prototype. So that's one way to start it. Another way to start is actually use something called a start trigger. So I'm going to unselect the auto start here. and add a start trigger here. And what we want to do is use a camera response. So in this case, we would select among the list of responses, camera, and select the camera layer. So everything to do with the camera response, we always use the camera layer. And the action that we want here is start. So once a user starts the scene here, they'll be actually triggering a camera start action here. So let's just see that in action. And we see that, it works the same deal without checking the auto start. Oh, yeah, forgot. Yeah. It works. Okay. So we have our camera layer started. Let's try to make the camera switch interaction. So basically what we want to do is when the user presses on this switch button, we want them to tap on it and the camera switch from there. So add a tap trigger. And in this case, we'll also use a camera response. And same deal with the camera layer, camera. And what we want here is we want to select a camera here. And what we want to do is we want to select switch. So it'll tell ProtoPie that as a response, you switch cameras when you press on this. So let's try that and see how that works. So I have my rear camera working right now. And what I want is, if I press on the button here, you see me in the front-facing camera again. Rear camera, also front camera. So we see that the switch action here actually switches the camera back and forth. That's pretty simple. And last but not least, you want to actually take a picture, right? So same deal with the triggers. So when the user actually presses on the shutter button, so in this case, tap shutter button, we want him to do something with the camera response. So again, select the camera response and also select your layers. And in order to take a picture in ProtoPie, what you can do is you don't actually take a picture and store it as a file, as a JPEG on your phone or on your prototype. We mimic that behavior using the stop action. So if we set the stop action, it actually captures that whatever you see on the camera layer on the moment that you tell it to stop. So it's like taking a screenshot. So this is how you can simulate a camera taking action in ProtoPie. And afterwards, you can do various kinds of interactions with that layer. Maybe pinch, zoom in and out, or you want to have it slide down to the preview panel. Those are some of the ways that you can use it. So let's see this in action. So here we have a thing working, and I'm going to press the shutter button, and now the frame is frozen. So we've actually taken a picture, or at least prototype an interaction of taking a picture here. So these are the basic ways of you can use the camera layer. And just remember that for taking a picture, best is to use the stop action here. Yes, so I think any questions on the camera demo? Yeah, we had some question about the auto update. Yes, yeah, Leah answered the question. So if you use 2 fingers and double tap on the player screen, you'll be able to refresh the prototype manually. So that's one way of doing. Yeah, if there are other questions about camera, just feel free to ask later at the end. And we'll just move on to the next demo, which is using the keyboard input. So for that, we will be going to the settings scene, and we'll be putting input forms here. And let's just create a. So ProtoPie makes it really easy to do keyboard inputs and do some pretty cool things with that. So if you go to the text menu here, you see what's called an input. So we'll make an input field and put it right here where we want to put our names. And the input layer is interesting. So let's just preview this. So on the studio preview, once you press on it, you can see a keyboard show up, but the keyboard is actually not real. But you can actually make inputs using your physical keyboard on your laptop or your computer. So let's say I'm going to say hello world by typing on my keyboard. So this works like this in the studio preview. Let's see how this works in the real phone. So if you see on the left, you see my phone mirrored. So I'm going to tap on input and you see a real keyboard show up. In this case, it's a real keyboard. So I'm going to type hello world here. Yeah, and you can actually, type using real keyboards. This is pretty cool. So you can do some pretty cool things with this. So we'll be building upon this input layer. So let's just make it a little more useful and explore the what features the input has to offer. So you can do resize, and make the input layer pretty and all. So let's just stretch it all the way to the column width of the column, and you can do various kinds of resize. So for example, you can make it give it more height and things like that. And one of the things that we provide is we provide a single line option and a multi-line option. So if you do multi-line, you can do, you can enter multi-line things. So hello world, how are you doing? That kind of thing. So it'll do multiple lines. And also you can do, you can also have it auto height, which is pretty cool if you do multiple. So if you go here, if you see here on the lower right, you see auto height. If you click on this, you can actually have the text box expand automatically like this. Yay. So you can also set a max height, so it caps the expansion of the text box to a certain height. So that's pretty cool. But in this case, we just want a single line. So we'll just stick to single line option here. And we offer two ways of setting a default text. So one is the text thing here. So we can say, if the user taps on this, we have hello written as a default. So here we see that hello is inputted already, and you can change it all the way however you want as a user. So that's pretty cool. But I think something more useful is, we leave this blank, is have a placeholder text. So in this case, we can set a placeholder text to have it appear before the user does anything to it. So let's just, in this case, let's just say name. Yeah, we want the user to enter their name. And, maybe make this a little lighter because, maybe more subtle. So in this case, we see that the name text appears here, and we want to enter our name. So in this case, I'll enter Luke. So we can set a placeholder text like this. And let's just make it a little more, we don't want any fill, border, or things like that. And padding, you can set a padding for your input layer, which is pretty cool. And another cool thing is you can actually specify the type of keyboard that you want. So in this case, we have many different options: text, URL, email, number, text password, number password, things like that. So let's just say I want to change it to a number keyboard. What we will see here is if I tap on it, a number keyboard appears on the right. And you know, if you want to do number inputs, this will be useful. And also, you see that you can do a password thing. So if I choose text password, I can, you know, have type text, it will be masked like this. So ProtoPie takes care of all these, you know, different keyboard scenarios for you, and they work on the phone prototype as well. So I'm gonna type a name here. I'm gonna type. Oh, I don't know why QuickTime is not mirroring this, but it shows on the phone masked input. So the keyboard on the phone prototype itself will adjust to whatever type of keyboard option you set here. So in this case, we just want text. And let's just duplicate these and make 2 more fields. And we're just going to call this, in this case, we want to have this as on the placeholder password. Also, confirm password on the third one. Yep. And I'm just going to change the name of the layers. Name. Confirm password. Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention is, you know, on the keyboard options, you can also specify the type of return keyword that you want to use. So you can have it go or send or done. So I'm just going to try done. And if I press on the keyboard here, it'll say done instead of next. So we can do some, you can specify, you know, different keywords according to your needs. So that's pretty cool. So let's apply some interactions. So if you want to work with keyboard interactions or input interactions in ProtoPie, what you want to do is you will be basically working with focus and return keywords here. So I'll explain one at a time. So for return, so let's say you have a situation where you type on the keyboard, you enter your name, and you press enter or return on your keyboard. Here it doesn't do anything because we haven't set it to anything, but you can apply an interaction where after when I press enter, it goes to the password field, and you know, if I press enter here, it goes to the confirm password field. So these are some of the things that you can do here. So let's just try that. So I'm going to change the, instead of go, I'm going to do next. So let's apply a trigger to the name layer. So if the trigger here I want is return. So when return is triggered on the name field, what I want to do is I want to focus in on the password field. So in this case, we will select the focus response. So if you select the focus response, you see focus in and focus out. So focus in basically means you focus in on the layer, and focus out is, you know, you focus out. So an example would be better to illustrate. So select focus in for the response action. And what we want to do is we want to focus in on the password layer. So return of the name layer, I want to focus in on the password layer. So this is how you remember. So let's just give it a go. I'm gonna put my name here. I'm gonna press enter. And as you see, when I press enter, the cursor moved automatically to the password field because we wanted to focus in on the password layer. So that's the interaction we added. And we can also do something with the focus trigger. So let's just say when I focus out of the password layer, I want to automatically focus in on the confirm layer. So we can also do something like that as an interaction. So when I select the focus trigger, and let's say we want to, when we focus out of the password layer, what we want to do is also, as a response, focus in on the confirm password layer. So let's just give that a go. So password, I enter something. Yeah, maybe I should have actually, wait. I should have made it a text password keyboard. Let's just give it a go again. Enter a password. I'm gonna tap somewhere else. So focusing out of the field here, you see that the confirm password has been focused, and I can keep on typing my password. So these are the sort of ways that you can use the return or focus triggers to do some pretty interesting interactions on the using the keyboards and the input layers in ProtoPie. And yeah, it's just as a let's just see how that works in the real keyboard. So I'm going to enter my name. I'm going to press enter. It focused on the password, and I'm entering the password. Yeah, for some reason the QuickTime doesn't show the mask password, but you see that it actually did on the phone app itself. Any questions on the keyboard interaction and input layer? Anything not clear or? Cool. So let's move on. So I think we'll be doing some really interesting things with the voice prototype. So I'm just gonna give you some more context on what we're trying to do. So in this prototype, we have, if you go to IoT scene, IoT home scene, you see a mic button here, right? So what we want to do is when the user taps on this button, mic button icon, we want them to do a voice sort of scenario. So the results of that, so when the user presses on this button, we want them to go to the scene and carry on with their voice interaction. So we're going to do this in two scenes. So the easier one first, let's go to IoT home and just add that trigger. So when the user taps on the voice icon, we want to, so add the tap trigger. We want them to jump to the scene where we're going to do the rest of the voice demo. So which is voice scene. Yep. So here, we're gonna go to the voice scene by tapping here. Okay, so it worked. So the rest we're gonna do in the voice scene. So let's move the voice scene. And we're here. Okay. So in the previous scene, we tapped on the mic button, and now we land here on the scene, and we have to do something with the voice. So I think the most typical kind of interaction that you build here is, you want to give a voice command, right? So let's explore that. So to do that, we're going to do a listen response. So, but we initiate that response when we land on this place. So let's add a start trigger. So start trigger, remember, is is initiated when you after you jump on the screen. So we use a start trigger, and then if you go to the response list, we see something called speak and listen, right? So we want to have the prototype listen to our command. So in this case, we are going to select a listen response, right? So here we see that listen has been selected, and we see a couple options. So first of all, if you tap on the languages, we see a lot of languages being supported here. So if you have to do a prototype in Danish, for example, or French, you're well covered. So we're using the Google voice engine here to do voice interactions. And so you have a lot of languages at your disposal. We're gonna just stick with English for now. And we have start and stop, which is similar to what we did in camera. So start means, it'll start listening, and stop means it'll stop listening. And what's interesting here is there's this field called continuous. So if you want to use continuous, it'll listen for you on and on until you tell it to stop explicitly. So you could be theoretically, you could be talking for hours and it'll be listening. Or maybe that was a bad example, but let's say you want to do like a 5-minute speech and have it keep on listening. You'll be selecting continuous in this case. But if you just want to give a simple command like turn off the kitchen light or something, like 1-2 sentences with very short interruption in between, you want to disable the continuous box. So I think if you think of normal Siri, Google Assistant, or Alexa kind of situation, what you want is like a single sentence command, right? So in this case, having continuous turned off would make sense, right? So let's just give it a preview. Let's just run it. And we see that at the start of the scene, we are seeing a little mic icon at the bottom. What this means in the preview window means that it is listening, right? So we see that the listen response has been working, but it's not very useful at this point because we didn't actually do anything with it, right? It's just listening right now. So let's figure out how we can make this a little more useful. So what to do with the voice that the prototype is listening? So in this case, we see something called voice command in the list of triggers. So this is the trigger that you will use if you want to do something with the whatever is listened. And you see that the trigger point you can select to do it while you're speaking. So this could be useful in certain circumstances, but in the typical voice command, what you want is, after you stop speaking, you want it to do some sort of action, right? So the trigger point after speaking will make more sense here. And we see command here. It's enabled by default. So check command if you want to have the voice command respond with certain actions associated to certain keywords, right? So if I want to do if I want to associate a certain action to the keywords kitchen light, turning off, things like that, I'll be entering that phrases here. So I'll just show you off kitchen. So you'll be doing something like this if you want to do something with these 3 keywords, right? And we also have the option to do the exclude. So this means like this will trigger responses when these keywords are excluded. So you can have some interesting prototyping situations that involve, excluding keywords, for example. And you also have the option of, null phrase detected. So this is useful when, I think if you play around with a lot of AI voice agents, there are times where, the assistant does not recognize what you're saying, and you have to cater towards that situation. So like, let's say you're talking some gibberish, and they might respond to like, I don't know what you're saying, I don't understand, please say it again. Those kind of responses you want, right? So in those cases, you would prototype something like that with the no phrases detected. Yep. So before we do any concrete action with the voice command keywords, let's just say we want to give the voice command and have this part actually write out what we are saying. So I think that might be useful. So in the start trigger, we listen and we want to do a thing where we have it right down here. So we'll be using the voice command trigger. And in this case, we don't want command. And also trigger point, we wanted to do while we're speaking. So yeah, so let's say I'm giving a voice command, turn off the kitchen light. I want that to appear in this text box while I'm speaking. So let's try that. So voice command, make sure you have command off and have trigger point to while speaking. And as a response, we want to do something with text, right? So we'll be using the text response. So the text response that we want to be manipulating is the I'm listening here. So let's just select that. I'm listening. Yep. And what we want to do here in the contents is we want the prototype to actually recognize what I'm saying and just spit it out using the text. And we have some nifty feature here in ProtoPie. Select formula. And what we're going to do is we're going to type $sign. And we see a lot of predefined variables here. And type voice transcript. Yeah, it auto completes here. So what this will do is it will transcribe what I'm saying in voice and put it in text. Yep. So just to repeat, so trigger point while I'm speaking, it's not a command. I want whatever's listened to be transcribed into text and applied to this I'm listening layer. So let's give it a go. So it's listening, right? And you see in the preview window that is actually writing down, putting into text whatever I'm saying, right? And it's pretty good at it. And it stopped listening because we didn't have listen to continuous, right? So after I gave that slight pause, it stopped transcribing what I'm saying, right? So I think that's pretty cool. And so that's a really helpful interaction if you're designing for voice, because you want the user to have good feedback of what the user is saying with their voice. But let's just do something a little more here. Yeah? We want to do something useful when a user gives a command. So add a trigger, in this case, voice command. And let's say we want to do something with, turn off the kitchen lights, right? So we want to show some sort of feedback to the user with, these keywords. So same deal. In this case, we want trigger point to be after speaking, and it is a command in this point. And we want to include phrases such as off, kitchen lights, right? So in this case, voice command will detect that if it detects that you have set off or kitchen or lights, then it will trigger some sort of response that we are going to define here, right? So, so this is our trigger. And let's see, what we want to do here is we want to do a couple things. So we see these layers here, right? So these are lumped into GUID. Actually, the GID container on the left also contains the try saying. So I'm just gonna move this text layer out because it hasn't been configured in the design file correctly. So I'm going to turn this when I say a command, I want to turn the opacity off to 0. And I'm going to change this text layer to say, to give some sort of useful response, right? And also, I think what we want to do is we want to have the prototype give some sort of voice response, right? Because that's the whole point of voice interaction, right? You say something in voice and the machine will say something back in voice. So let's try that. So as a response, first things first, I want to change the opacity of the GUID container group. Yeah, I want to change the opacity to 0. So this is pretty basic. And what I want to do is I want to change the text layer of that, of the try saying layer, right? Try saying layer to be something a little more useful. So like in this case, so we're asking turn off the kitchen lights. So a typical response would be something like, okay, turning off the kitchen lights. Yeah. And yeah, let's just give it a go first. Okay, turn off the kitchen lights, please. Yeah, so it recognized from the voice command that that these keywords have been registered off kitchen lights. And as a response, the row of information layer here has been turned off to not show with the opacity response. And also we changed the text here to do something useful, to give useful feedback. So it's saying, okay, turning off the kitchen lights. We have one more thing to do, which is actually say something out loud, right? So let's just, for sake of simplicity, have it say the same thing. Okay, turning off the kitchen lights. So in the response layer, you can see that there's this thing called speak response. And if you select that, we can add that response. And we have, in this case, we wanted to start speaking, right? So we just leave it as start. And what we want to do is we want to say the same thing, right? Okay, turning off the kitchen lights. And you can do various kinds of voice options. You can select the language. In this case, since we're dealing with English, we'll just leave it as is. And you can have a certain voice profile, whether it be a female or a male, and change the speed, pitch, and things like that, and play around with the kind of voice you want to sound. So let's give this interaction another go. Hi, can you turn off the kitchen lights?
Okay, turning off the kitchen lights.
Yeah, so instead of just giving it a text, visual text feedback, it also spoke to you using the speak response. And while we're at it, let's maybe play with the voice engine a little and have a really fast talking male respond. Hi, can you turn off the kitchen lights?
Okay, turning off the kitchen lights.
Yeah, so we can play with the various features of the voice engine and give different responses to different keywords. So this is a very basic voice interaction, and you can play around with the various triggers and responses. However, to your needs and the use cases that you're trying to build. And if you want to do more different responses, you can add voice commands with different keywords or different responses. So it's whatever you imagine, you can try it here and see if your design is good or if you can improve. Yep. So any questions on the voice interaction part? Yeah, so I guess people are seeing that the transcript feature is cool. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool feature, definitely useful, and it's pretty accurate too. So pretty nifty there. And yeah, so the overall voice features, they're not bad. Yeah, they're pretty good. If you have any feedback after the session, if you have any feedback on the voice features, let us know on Canny, or if you can reach out to us and let us know how we can improve. Yes, Matt saying, yeah, great for emulating voice only UI like Alexa skills. Yes, you can do it without the screen as well. So if you have a no UI voice kind of situation, you can definitely use this. Yes, and test different situations with the actual user. Yes, thank you, Ria. Also, Tony asks, every intent must have their own trigger. So if I understand correctly, so I think what Tony is asking is every intent must have their own trigger. So I think generally speaking, I think that's one way to approach it. So let's say, so like we have the voice command as a trigger here, right? And the responses are triggered when these conditions are basically met. So if you have a lot of intents, like turning off lights or ordering pizza, whatever, there I guess the possibilities are basically endless. So if you have a lot of intents that you want to do in one prototype, I guess the natural way would be to have each as a voice command trigger and then give it some response. That's one way of doing it. I don't know if there's a better way of doing it. Maybe I'm mistaken, but yeah, if I'm pretty sure that's one way to do it. Hope that answers your question. Yep. I guess if there's no more questions, yeah, let's just wrap up. Let me bring up my keynote. Yep. Share my screen. Yeah, so today we looked at how to use native sensors in your prototypes using ProtoPie. I think that's pretty cool. As I used to be a designer, and I think it's pretty cool because you don't have to use a lot of code to actually play with these sensors. So it's pretty cool, and you can definitely try many different new possibilities without having to bother a developer or things like that. So definitely cool. I encourage you to explore more about these sensors on your own. And just to recap, So we'll be showing more, I guess, examples of what you can do based on what you learned today. So this is a ProtoPie made by one of our folks, Claire. So you can do a voice.
Call mom at 7.
And you see that the text has been input into the actual UI card here. So that's pretty cool. So these are some of the things that you can extend the use of voice interaction in ProtoPie. What we didn't cover in detail today is tilt sensor interaction. So here you see that you can do different things with the tilt sensor on your phone. And those are pretty basic, tilt responses, tilt triggers that you can use in ProtoPie. So yeah, this was made by Puneet. Pretty cool. And yeah, so these are some of the ways that you can further develop your ideas. And yes, that's it.